Who's local to Atlanta? Good. Who's from at least one state away? And then who's from further than one state away? Where are you guys from? Michigan? San Diego. Ooh. Sarah's where? Minnesota. Oh, that's right, you're the node squirrel. So I'm not session hijacking, it's just Steve, as he said, is a little bit late. I just left Acquia from an internship. I was captain intern, that's my nick. I also go by Gadams in the Drupal community. I have a big passion for servers, performance, and optimizations. And so today we're going to talk about Puppet, and that's what I'm going to cover. And then when Steve gets here, he's going to go more into a fully fledged Puppet manifest, and then Vagrant, and he'll continue from there. How many of you know what Puppet is? Good. So Puppet, as its name says, is like a puppet. You will always have a Puppet master. Your Puppet master is going to be a server, which you install, and it'll be the head, and you make manifest files. That's what they're called. They're basically configuration files. So an example is, how many of you have your own environments that you have your own production environments, and you configure your servers by hand every time you need to add a new one? Time consuming, isn't it? Yeah. So the great thing about using Puppet is when you have your beautiful Puppet master. If I was better artistically, I'd draw some guy with strings on his hands standing over the world. You can say, Puppet master, I want a new web server. And this new web server will come up, and you can just auto-deploy. You know, let's say you have an Ubuntu box. You can say an Ubuntu box with your Puppet client on there. You can say, Puppet client, connect to this Puppet master. You're a web server. Great. In however long it takes to install an Apache stack or an Nginx stack with all your configuration files, Puppet will deploy it there. You want to do database files? You can do that. Now let's say, that's great, it does basic packet management for you. That's nice. Hey! So Puppet can even go further. Let's say you want to install your base packages, and let's say you want to install Apache. So every web server that you have will have Apache, but let's say you have different size web servers. Let's say you have a web server that has 1 gig of RAM, and 4 processors, and you have other web servers that have 8 gigs of RAM and 4 processors. The difference in performance and optimizations is the configurations are really different. You can then, with Puppet, define, so you'll have your Puppet web, and it'll install Apache and whatever else is needed, and then below this, you can write your custom configuration scripts. And you can have these hard-coded, or you can write an automated script using Perl, Ruby, Bash. Who's really good with Bash? Bash for the win. And then you can even go further down into having these be autonomous, or, as I said, just standard config files. Oh, it detects it's an 8 gig server. Bam, here's the config file it uses. Great thing is instead of having to go back through every time, let's say six months from now, you determine that, oh, wow, my max client connections, I can really change that. Now I have to go through and change these on all of my web heads, and let's say you have 200 web heads. You can just go to your Puppet master, change this config file, and when Puppet runs on the nodes, it'll run however often you tell it to, every 30 minutes, every hour, every 6 hours, every 8 hours, once a week. It'll update itself for you on the fly. Do you all understand that you deploy a server and Puppet does this for you? So Puppet's not just only for servers, it's used in desktops too, and it'll do it with any operating system. So Oracle uses it, and they've scaled it to 50,000, 60,000 nodes. There was an article recently talking about Puppet and Chef. Chef is a competitor Puppet. It's a little bit younger. It's not, I don't think it's as fully fledged yet, but it's pros and cons. Puppet's been around a little bit longer, and I think it's the nicer one to use. So this comes in really useful when you want to start doing automated testing. Development environments, or you want to start running system tests. and you're going to be using Hudson or something, you can install Puppet, and you can even have your own Hudson scripts run. And when Hudson needs a new node, it can go ahead and run its configuration scripts, and it'll deploy its nodes as needed, and Puppet will take care of all the configuration for you. Does anyone have any questions yet? No questions? I feel sad. Yeah.
Is something like this useful for load testing as well, or is it just too much volume for something like this to?
Load testing, like you want to see how high you need to scale?
Right.
Yeah, this is great for this. An example would be, let's say you started out with 4 nodes, and you just wanted to keep adding nodes to see, like, we have 16 nodes, but let's see how many concurrent users or simultaneous users we can have connected that are authenticated versus versus non-authenticated users. You can just keep adding web nodes. Before I joined Acquia, there was another example. We had tens of thousands of users concurrently. And they're all authenticated, so we couldn't use any reverse proxy caching. We couldn't use Varnish. We couldn't use, we could use Nginx, but we stuck with Apache. And we had all these users, and so as the users' loads increased, and we had to keep going up and up, and each server would support about 1,800 users apiece, we'd add more and more and more. So we had a shared file server with NFS. We had an NFS server, and then we had our Puppet master, and we had our dual redundant database masters behind that. So as we spun up web nodes, Puppet master would keep spinning up web nodes. The web nodes would then sync with the NFS server, and we'd be able to scale in 15 minutes from 2,000 to 10,000 users, and we just keep adding servers as needed. And we had an auto load balancing utility. It's like, oh, it's at 60% capacity. I'm going to spin up another one. Oh, this one's at 60% capacity, and it just kept going. And we were all pretty high. We had vertical scaling, so then we started going horizontal. So Puppet really allows you to do this really fast. When I first started out, when I was younger and less intelligent about this thing, I would write all my own bash scripts, and I'd log in. I'd be like, yeah, run this bash script. And I've gotten lazier and more efficient at this, so I just go, oh, connect to the Puppet master. You're a web server. Oh, you're a database server. And it does it for me, and it's beautiful, and it saves lots and lots and lots of time. So Puppet is free. It's open source. There are professional companies that provide services, just like there is Lullabot and like there is Acquia. But the documentation is really awesome, and it's really easy.
That was the stock market.
But yeah. So further questions, add-on questions before yes, sir.
How does it compare to using something proprietary like AWS?
So you would use this in conjunction with AWS. The problem is it's not so much a problem. It's AWS works very well because you can create your own AMIs, and then you'd just be spinning up your AMIs. So what happens when you have to update or you have to change all your configuration files for your M1 large AMI type? You've then got to redeploy all those AMIs. Whereas you could make a base AMI that has all your base packages installed, and then Puppet could install the additional packages and run all the configuration changes on it. So it's dependent upon, do you want to redeploy your instances every time you have to make a significant server change, or do you want to have Puppet manage this and you have one AMI type? Further questions before I'm going to start going on? How many of you use Puppet? Do you guys use it for production or development?
We're just in testing phase right now.
Just in testing phase? Very cool.
Do you use it with cloud environments?
Yeah. That's where I've always used it. I've been in one environment where we actually used it in physical hardware, but that was a college campus. But for EC, I've used it in AWS, and then I've used it in Linode and Rackspace, and it's all fine. Any other follow-up questions now? So the great thing about Puppet is that you can set dependencies. So your manifests. Your manifest files are your configuration files that what your Puppet master will give to your Puppet client. These manifests, you can write code dependencies. How many of you have used the utility Apache Top? How many of you used my top? A couple of you? Okay. So here's, yes, sir.
Just need to check and see that everybody has a badge. Everybody has a badge.
Badges for the win. So in your manifest files, it's really simple how you define things. You can make things required, not required, or optional. And an example would be if you were running an older, how many of you are running the latest, greatest, like Ubuntu 10.04 LTS? How many of you are running Ubuntu that's older than 10.04? You're running like 8.04 LTS. Okay. An example would be, let's say you do apt-get install mytop. So you could say, you know, your manifest file would be Puppet, and you could say, I'm writing this off the fly, so this might be a little wrong. I haven't had to do this in like a few months, so I'm a little rusty with this. This is the great thing about Puppet. You write it once, and you can just kind of forget about it until you need to run it again, until you need to write your own manifest files. You're welcome. Before I'm totally wrong, I am going to pull it up from the documentation. And then let's say mytop. How many of you know what mytop provides you? So mytop is a really beautiful utility. It connects to MySQL, and it'll show you real time what queries are being run, how long they've been running for, what database and what tables that they are doing for. It's really nice when you have an overloaded database server and you're trying to figure out what's the running query that is killing my database performance. So mytop is one of those really useful utilities. Any of the Puppet guys, am I writing this wrong? It doesn't feel right, but we'll find out in a second when my machine finishes booting up. And then you can actually specify a configuration file for your own, like, then you could specify you can specify your own special configuration files. And if I could type my password right, is he on his way, Mike?
Ironically, the cab took him to the wrong convention center, and he is now on his way.
Okay.
Again. He's not meant to be here, but you're doing a great job. So.
Well, I'm trying not to like steal
all his stuff.
Right.
This is a good audience. They want to learn. You're smart. Steal all of it.
That's-
Steal all of it. You're doing great.
Was not prepared. I think that's what we should start doing. Is tonight we should do Drupal improv at the party.
Slideshow karaoke.
How long have you guys been using Puppet at
A while. Yeah. Yes.
A question for you. The newest, I don't know if you're familiar with how familiar you are with Acre, but the newest version will actually allow you to deploy to other nodes. Is this something that can be
In conjunction.
Yeah, I figured it.
Yeah. So this would be something very useful. And his question was, is this something that is being used with Agere? And yes, it can be used with Agere. I don't know how Omega 8 CC does it, but I have a very strong suspicion that they're either using Puppet or Chef Engine, and that they're using that to deploy their base servers, and then that actually runs their configuration scripts to connect them to their Agir master. Oh, joy. No internet connection. And everyone else is connected. Why not me? Magic? No. I can't win today. I was going to look for the Puppet website. You've got a manifest.
Check out
Oh, thank you.
Nano. So
That's, yeah. I can work from Nano. So this wonderful man, who's awesome. I'm just. That is a security flaw. So great. Actually, this is a beautiful manifest file. I really like this one. I can thank who? Okay. So this is a manifest file, and in this one, it's going to install MacKit and some other MySQL utilities. How many of you are familiar with MacKit? That's another really awesome thing that you should all be using is called MacKit. It's M-A-A-K-I-T. MacKit allows you to do wonderful things such as slow query digest logs for MySQL. So if you want to get and you have slow query logs enabled and you want to get a good digest of what's been running, install MacKit, because it has all the utilities and needs for it. MacKit.
How's that spelled?
M-A-A-K. M-A-A-K-I-T. Oh, MattKit. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. My mistake. Doing this on the fly. There is.
No, I can't tell. There's cables, but what is it? Does that move?
The back projection off that?
I think so.
Ah.
Or it moves, maybe.
Does anybody have a adapter for a MacBook Air?
Does Eric have a different one?
Have any use cases or wants to know if I have this problem, how would I solve this with X, Y, and Z?
How does Puppet compare to something like DCFG?
How does Puppet compare to something like BCFG? BCFG, I've only used it very minimally, just from doing the automated press flow that David Strauss had written for. BCFG is another configuration management, but I don't think it's as fully fledged as Puppet. I think it's more of a services-based versus a holistic solution. I could be a little bit wrong with that one. I've only worked with it very minimally, so, but BCFG is I've only seen it used as like services specific.
But it's basically to do the same type of thing, or in the same.
It's in the same zone as configuration management, but I think Puppet is really kind of the powerhouse behind this. There is Chef, like I said, and Chef is nice. It's younger, so it's not as well developed. It's kind of like a Drupal 5 compared to a Drupal 7, which would be Puppet. Puppet's kind of like Drupal 7. It's very mature now, or the Drupal community is now very mature versus what it was 4 years ago. We had wizardry happen. We turned on the projector, and the TV turned.
So before there was Puppet Master, there was a lot of like manual work.
There was a lot of manual work. There's magic happening. There was a lot of manual work. A lot of people would roll their own services, and then there was also a lot of this proprietary. There was Dell. I don't remember what it was called. It was Dell Openware configuration management, add 4 other words. It's what it was, and that's what they used for their database server. For when Dell would build you a data center for all their utilities, that's what they would use. And the guy, I don't remember who, the guy who originally created Puppet, he left, it was Dell or another data center services company that did all this automated deploy, and he wrote this fully open source based on what he saw was the need in the market, but none of the utilities actually did everything that Puppet does. The nice thing about Puppet is you can have one Puppet master, and you can run Red Hat servers, you can run Ubuntu servers, you can run FreeBSD servers, you could run Windows servers. And you can write the configs, and the Puppet master will handle all of this. And then you can set it up on an automated time display of, oh, every half hour I want you to check to see if there's a new config. If there's a new config, update yourself. So this comes really useful when security updates are released. Instead of having to do a manual push, you can tell Puppet Master, add these new files to the config, and it'll go ahead and run this whenever it runs it. I'm prepping.
No.
We're going to go down with that one. Yeah.
Does anybody have an HDMI adapter for DisplayPort?
DisplayPort HDMI adapter.
I don't even know if they make them.
They do make them.
Do they?
I didn't bring that one.
So we've got Phase 2 technology, Mike O'Connor, and this is an awesome presentation right here.
DVI.
Oops.
Give me the. Are you done with the VGA one? That one's mine.
Yeah. You don't have the HDMI though? Okay, so no luck with that. Can we keep trying the VGA, or do you think we're just out of luck?
That's all right. I will go back to the whiteboard if I can just look at your nano screen.
Yeah.
I can read it. I can read it perfectly fine. I just didn't know how to. I'll just leave that there.
Okay.
So we're going old school now. I'm sure this is very fitting, especially for being in a technology, one of the leaders of technology in the world. We're going old school.
horas here with GTR by here.
Hold on for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm gonna take that off for a second.
Yeah, that's fine. So I ran off the board a little bit. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to. Bad judge of space. We'll ignore the windows behind me. It's not really important. It's Microsoft.
Table, but-
So this is kind of what a general manifest file would look like. We'd have our class, and this in this example, our class is called MyCustomMySQL. The package that we want to make sure that's going to be installed is MacHit, so we do this ensured is present. Then we do our service MySQL, enabled is true, and then we would require the package. Because we can enable a service and it doesn't have to be installed, and then the server throws errors and it yells and it screams and it cries. And then in this example, I did quote MySQL-server, which for Ubuntu is just MySQL-server. You can do apt-get install MySQL-server, and Ubuntu will go ahead and install MySQL Server 5.1. This is for 10.04 is what I'm basing that assumption off of. Yes, sir.
So, I mean, I know this is kind of a complex question, but what happens under the hood when you've got these config options here? You want to configure MySQL Server. Well, when I'm installing MySQL, I usually specify root password or other type of services, or maybe configuration files I have to edit. How does that get addressed by Puppet, or does it?
It does. It does. If I was going to look for how you initialized yours. I'll do general.
For the server itself?
Yeah. So
Um,
that makes sense.
Okay.
So Puppet, and in his example, they use the exact argument. So you can do something like, does this one close? Yeah, this is a close.
And this is just our MySQL package.
Yeah. So, and this is all just for MySQL since this is what he's showing me. So I'm going with MySQL. You can do this for the other services and other products. His question is how does Puppet do the initialization of MySQL root passwords and replication and whatnot? You can do this two ways. You can have a bash script. Let's say you have a default password that you're always going to use for root. You can have a bash script, and then you can use the exec command. Can I erase this top half, or you guys, do you want me to leave it? Can't-
It would make
Okay. This is still inside all of class MySQL. We haven't closed this bracket yet. So as we scroll down, and it gets erased, all right. Colon. And then, okay. So they do there's two ways you can do this. You can do this through bash. You could write a bash script, and you could just specify path user bin bash. Bless you. quotes, then comma. So end quotes, comma. Command, which
Hey, guys.
hey, the man with the plan.
Theoretically.
You're projectorless.
Yeah,
Projectorless?
yeah,
Okay.
you're projectorless, so I'm.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I was saying, I mean, we wouldn't be able to get through the presentation at this point anyway, but obviously there's a big turnout, a lot of interest here. So I was telling Stephen we should do some kind of have him do, you know, a webinar, a live webinar or something. We'll get something up, so please just reach out to us at Treehouse Agency on Twitter or on the website, treehouseagency.com, and we'll definitely set something up because obviously people wanted to see something. Stephen does have a great presentation. He was working on it a little bit too hard.
I wanted to get the perfect high fidelity demo together. And, yeah, didn't get the fact that the conference was not in the hotel. So.
And then, but you want to just keep going. I mean, at this point, yeah.
Can't figure out how to switch it.
Oh, that was sad. I didn't even see how to do it. Package. All right.
It's got to be something with the system, right?
As I run off the board again. And then your command would be your bash-c, and then you would set your MySQL password from this. Or you could just specify an actual bash script, and so when Puppet runs itself, it'll download all the required files that it's needed, and then run it. Does anyone else have any follow-up questions? Sorry, this wasn't exactly what Vagrant and all that other awesome stuff.
But it was still great. Thanks again.